I'm Pastor Henry Hildebrandt. This is session number 8. We are back at it, brother.
Yes.
Thank the Lord. Good. Just a little bit of repetition here, a little bit of overview from the previous times. I think what we will do is, why don't we give our listeners a quick overview of, since we said that the 7 parables in Matthew 13 and the 7 seals in chapter 6 of Revelation.
Yep.
And the 7 trumpets in chapter 8. So why don't we quickly go over that and just give them the verses. I got them marked here. You probably have them too. So let's see if we have them. Matthew 13. So we have the first parable starts in chapter 13, verse 3. And then the second one in verse 24. Number 3 starts in verse 31. And then parable number 4 starts in verse 33. And then parable number 5 starts in verse 44. Parable number 6 in verse 45. And then the last one in verse 47. And let's go to Revelation chapter 6. And let's just... so the first seal open, we see that in chapter 6, number 1. And then the second seal is in verse 3. Third seal is in verse 5. Fourth seal is in verse 7. The fifth seal is in verse 9. The sixth seal is in verse 12. And then the seventh seal is in chapter 8, verse 1. That's why it's very important that people understand it's not necessarily chronologically written. It can be very confusing if you think that, right?
Yes.
And then
we have the trumpets.
So Revelation 8, verse 7 is the first, where it says the first angel sounded, first trumpet.
Yep.
Second trumpet is in verse 8. So this is in chapter 8. And then the third trumpet is in verse 10. The fourth trumpet is in verse 12. The fifth trumpet is in chapter 9, verse 1. And then we have the sixth trumpet is in chapter 9, verse 13. And then the seventh trumpet, where do we have that? That one is it
chapter 10?
10, verse 1, right? Because it's talking about the seventh angel in the days of the voice of the seventh angel. Yes, so
he shall begin to say.
That's right, chapter 10, verse 7. So this way you have an idea, since we are saying that these things are happening concurrently, which means when the first seal opens, what is happening during that time is described in the sounding of the first trumpet, and so forth and so on. And chapter 13, as we said last time, very, very important that Jesus, as the victor, already writes history or already foretells. So how does that go? Prophecy is history foretold.
Yes.
In other words, what is prophecy? Prophecy means they tell you now already what history will look like.
Yes.
And history is prophecy fulfilled, right? But the beautiful thing is that Jesus already ahead of time made sure, he already said what it's going to be like. So he already left the legacy. He already assured the legacy, right?
That's right. And we talked about how a mighty angel in Revelation 4, was holding the little book.
Yes.
And then John was desiring to see what was in that little book.
Yes.
And he says, who is worthy to open the book? And it says Jesus Christ was worthy. And he already opened the book in Matthew 13. So it's all connected and all works perfectly in hand. And just one more thing. One more reference.
Yes.
Revelation chapter 11, verse 15 is where it says, and the seventh angel sounded. So Revelation chapter 10 talks about the seventh angel. In Revelation 11, we actually see where he sounded. So
excellent.
Just to make that.
That's chapter 11, right?
Chapter 11, verse 15, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, and we don't need to go.
Yes,
over that.
Actually, the seventh trumpet. So let's just correct that and just say that is here it says the seventh trumpet. So that is Revelation 11, verse 15.
That's
excellent.
Right.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Revelation 10 does deal a lot with the seventh angel, so it's all connected. So
it's all connected.
Yes.
So maybe we should just say again that when it's talking about the little book, that is referring to this book that was sealed with 7 seals.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And in that book, the whole book of Revelation, The whole book of Revelation, everything in the Revelation happens in the seven seals.
That's right.
And those seven seals, those is referring to the 7 periods of the gospel day.
That's right.
Morning time and on that way, and we'll look at a couple of them.
Yes.
And actually, it is not possible for the people in the first period to fully understand the other periods,
That's
because
right.
if they didn't live in those periods,
Exactly.
right? So that's why, again, as we said in the past, when John, the Apostle John, when he saw the messenger of the end time, he was amazed.
That's right.
He fell at his feet and wanted to worship him because he was amazed to see this is what's happening in the end time. So it's not that we in this time, that we belittle them or whatever, but it wasn't possible for them to understand. And John he was in awe when he saw what would be happening in this time.
Exactly. And as we go on and as you study, you're going to notice that, and obviously this is not just for today, but as we go on, just like John noticed and said, oh, they're living in a much more glorious time than I am.
Yes.
Our eyes will start to be open. We say,
Yes.
oh, I wouldn't, this is not supposed to sound bad, but I would not want to live in those days.
Right,
because
right.
we're in such a more glorious time now.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So often we hear people say,
I wish I could live back
I
then.
wished I could have lived back then.
Exactly.
When you say that, when you say you wish you would have lived back then, by that you are saying you don't understand this time.
Exactly.
Because if you do understand this time, then you will not wish to live in another time, because we could say we're living in the grand finale.
That's right.
Because Paul, when he was alive, he knew that, he said, after my departing, terrible times will come, right?
Yes,
in other words. So we don't say that. We cannot say that. We look at the period where we're living, and we're saying we're living in the grand finale. We're living in the beautiful time at the end. And there is no prophecy that tells us that after the end, or in the seventh period of time, there's no prophecy that says it'll go down again.
Exactly.
There's nothing like that.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's why John fell at the feet of the angel at the end of time, because he was just like, this is the biggest prophetic event that's ever going to happen.
Totally. So I thought we would just briefly mention in Revelation chapter 6, when it opened the second seal, and then the third and the fourth. So if we look at we see we saw last time that the white horse, which the white horse rider is Jesus Christ.
That's right.
The army that follows him on white horses are the saints, are the people of God, right? So when the book of Revelation talks about white linen or white robes or white horses, that means purity, that means light, that means holiness, that means good. When it talks about black, when it talks about something comes from the bottom, that's not. And the beautiful thing is, when you get this symbolism, it's actually not that difficult. When you understand the symbolism, you notice that it doesn't change. It doesn't.
That's right.
It's not happening where all of a sudden the white horse is a terrible thing, or the black horse all of a sudden is Jesus Christ. No. Exactly. It doesn't change. Okay. Exactly. So after the white horse came, we look at these seals, and after the white horse, we see the red horse.
That's right. Going in opposition.
Going in the opposite direction of the white horse. So the white horse actually kept on riding the whole time.
Yes,
the whole time.
that's right.
Kept riding. And then here was the devil tried. The devil already knew. The devil already knows he's a loser.
That's right.
But he tries, and he keeps changing costumes.
Yes,
So he comes with the red horse and does this. And then comes the black horse. And then comes the pale horse. So I thought we would just briefly mention that during the time of the black horse, how he was weighing out the food.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
During that time. And maybe we can get into that more maybe some other time. But during this period of time, there was difficult times for the people of God. In other words, if we go back to Matthew 13, we see that during the second period, which starts in
verse 24.
24, so we see another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field, which is what he did.
Exactly. And he's making reference to the first parable. He's saying,
yes,
this is already what happened.
Yes.
And Jesus came, he sowed the good seed.
Yes.
And then right here, it's talking about exactly what Paul was seeing when he said, after my departing comes a falling away, or after this, like they saw negativity. And here we actually
here we actually literally see it. He says, But while man slept,
Yes.
his enemy came and sowed tares. So here we have a negative thing.
That's right.
Here we have the red horse coming in. Here we have the downfall. What's it
Yes,
called?
the beginning of the apostasy.
Yeah, the beginning of the apostasy. The beginning of the falling away that Paul was
right.
talking about,
Exactly.
right? That is happening in the second period. And then in the third period, we read about the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took, sowed in his field. Another negative thing, how the birds came and lodged in the tree, right? And then in the fourth one, it's talking about the leaven, which means it spoils the whole bread, right? So we could say Jesus described the dark ages.
That's right.
He describes the dark ages in the second seal, third, fourth, fifth, and then towards the end, we see it's turning the other way, right?
Yep.
So we look back now, and it's not hard for us to say, oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. There was a long period of time where the spiritual food was very scarce. When the Bible talks about wheat is made to make bread from, right? So when the Bible talks about, when it says instead of them having wheat, they had barley.
Yeah.
Barley was actually considered in animal food. It was a cheaper, well, spiritually speaking, we could say a watered down gospel.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
It was a watered down gospel.
It was not the real thing.
It wasn't the real thing. So that was measured out during the fifth seal, during the second, third, and the fourth seal. So those were dark ages, really dark ages.
Yes.
It wasn't that there wasn't saints. It wasn't that the white horse rider wasn't riding, but it was the condition of the church was really, really going through a very, very difficult time.
That's right. That's right.
Very good. Do we need to point out anything else in this one here? Then, when we're coming more towards the next ones, that'll be very, very exciting, because there we see how we are pulling out of the dark ages.
That's right.
And how the church is going to begin to be restored, how a light will break at last, how we see, if we would say the Bible was open during that time. And actually, we could maybe just briefly refer to that. So when it says they brought forth fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, some. So there was a time when the bearing of fruit was very, very low.
That's right.
Very low.
That's right.
That does not mean that the people of God, well, some people bring lots of fruit and some bring less. No, we have no excuse in this time where the light has broken forth, where the book is open.
Yes.
We have no excuse. All of us must, to give an example, in Matthew 25, to one he gave 5 talents, to another one 3, and to another one 1. The one with the 1 talent, it was expected of him to also bring 100-fold.
Yes.
He was supposed to bring 1 more talent back, right?
That's
The
right.
one that had 3, he brought back another 3. So that's 100%, right?
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that some of us will get away with 20% of bringing food. No, it's talking about there was a time when there was very little, because sometimes even people that don't have a lot of light, but they live up to that light, they bring 100-fold
To what
fruit
they know.
To what they know, and that's the key. right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Anything else, brother? I think that's a good overview of what we wanted to look at today,
Yes.
unless you have something else.
No, I think that's really good. I think we could just
Next time we'll latch onto that. Maybe we'll do a little bit of review of what we just said. It was a little quick overview here, but that is basically what was happening. Is the second seal, third, fourth, kind of into the fifth. Somewhat, it was a
a decline.
dark time. It was a real spiritual decline.
That's right.
And that is what Paul foresaw coming, and he prophesied that it would be that.
Exactly.
But thank God we can look back, and thank God the gospel day does not end on a low note. Thank God it ends on a high note.
That's right.
I've often used the example of fireworks. When they have a show of fireworks, it never ends on a low note.
That's right.
It never ends just one poof and okay, oh, that was the end. No, they say the end. Just hang on. Oftentimes we have heard the expression as well. Well, the Lord is going to come back, and when He comes back, will He find faith? Maybe there will just be a few, like they say, a few berries at the end of top of the tree. No, the Lord is coming back for a glorious church without spot or wrinkle.
That's
So
right.
we're living in that time.
Yes.
Restoration is here. God is revealing again. There's clarity on the Word of God, and God is opening up the book of Revelation for us to know what is going on.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we're living in a wonderful time.
Yes. Could I just add one more thing?
Yes.
I feel like we went over that quite fast, but I think this is a question that could be is just like, okay, so which time are you talking about?
Okay.
Like, in which time period are you talking about? Now you're talking about an apostasy and this, that, and the other. If you can have one thing straight,
Yes.
that when the first seal opened,
Yes.
that was the days of the early apostles.
Yes.
And they prophesied, and they said, like Paul said, and what I believe Peter said, that they foresaw that a falling away was going to happen. And then that's where it's not like the second seal is way disconnected.
No.
Like, in as far as time is concerned, it actually immediately follows.
Because he said, he that holds that back,
Yes.
when he's removed,
that
and
letteth will-
that was him. Like, he was holding that back. Yes, there was no gap there. That was
That's right.
That followed right after
That's
that.
right. So now you don't really need to look for some mystical books that don't exist. You can go to your history books and see
Yes.
what happened right after the early apostles.
That's right.
What crept in, and then you just go down in history a little bit further. Okay, what happened then? Like, what was what did the Dark Ages look like? And then
Yes.
you'll be able to connect the symbolism. It's actually not that hard to understand.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of confusion that has been put in the atmosphere about this.
Yes.
But with proper understanding of where this is in time,
Yes,
I think it's very easily to be understood.
absolutely.
So,
Thank you so very much for your attention. God bless you.
yes.